First, I want to thank you, everybody, for coming on a beautiful Saturday morning in fall to listen to me, of all things, on strategic business execution. But strategic business execution is a topic that's very close, at least in my heart. The reason being is I've been working for 20 some odd years, and I've been teaching about 13 years. And as a consultant working for Fortune 500 companies, as well as a lot of other smaller companies, some of them nonprofits, some of them are actually quite well known, College Board, Consumer Reports, Lumina. They may not be Fortune 500, but how many people here taking SAT? Right? Probably practically everybody. And what I've found is through both the practice side of consulting, working in business, and the theory side of management strategy, is that there is a gaping hole, which I call business execution. So today's presentation is an overview. I've been looking at this topic for close to 10 years, and what I've put together are my ideas into one presentation, hopefully in 60 minutes with plenty of time for people to ask questions. We passed out some note cards, and if you have questions later, feel free to take on the cards and just send it in, or just throw your hands up and ask the questions. This session is being recorded because I like to post it on YouTube to talk about strategic business execution. So if any of you don't really want to be recorded, write your question, I'll just say it for you. Okay? Having said that, thank you again for coming, and let's get started. Today, what we'll cover is what is business execution? Why is it important in the business world today? How should we frame the question of business execution? It's a very, very broad topic. You talk to 100 executives, chances are 100 executives know what business execution. But if you ask people to start defining it, you probably get 100 different definitions. So I'd like to put some framework around that so we could look at it in a uniform way. And then my company, I actually recently left corporate world, as some of you know, started my own consulting company, and we consult with a lot of our clients. What we assemble is essentially 5 rules that we think is universally applicable to almost all situations, and with a little tweak, it actually even applies to you personally as well. So that's one of the last piece of today's conversation. So, prologue. Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. How many people agree or disagree with that? I had the idea of forming on my own company a very long time ago, and it was great. It was a back of napkin, talking to friends, and then trying to get this company launched was really, really hard. And that is true in business world as well. So my interpretation is having a great idea is important. So this lecture, this whole presentation on business execution, isn't to say that strategy is not important. It is only to say that having a good strategy is only the beginning. It is not sufficient. So 2 more questions, by show of hands. How many of you have a lot of ideas, but not enough time to do something about them? Just show of hands. Wow. That's good. That means a couple things. 1, you are very smart. Congratulations. 2, you don't have enough time, right? And 3, you're probably not very realistic either, because if you have really realistic goals, you try to have fewer ideas. Of course, in my case, I keep on having new ideas, and I even have a folder on my laptop called Special Topics. I just write down new ideas. So it's always a rat chase. How many of you work for organizations that have the similar problems? In other words, long on strategy, but short on execution. I used to work for a lot of organizations doing strategies, and we come up with beautiful binders, beautiful plans, and everything is written perfectly. Except the minute it goes into execution, if it ever made to execution in the first place, the whole plan just blew up. And I think that's a lot of people's experience as well. So why is execution more difficult? And that's some of the questions that we've been asking. I think reason number 1, execution is difficult because it is messy. if you think about planning, in the plan you could lay out all the strategies. You could come up with beautiful framework. You could come up with processes, governance model, how things ought to happen. And of course, the reality is that no plan survives the first contact with the enemy. And almost no project truly remains static the first time it hits a major issue, a risk, a change, a problem that requires some kind of deviation. Execution is messy because the team member you expect to show up on Monday morning decided to have an extra long weekend, or somebody happened to be sick. The vendor that you count on to deliver that service, even though they promised 99%, let's say, uptime, that 1% happened to be the minute you needed the most. Right? All these things happen. So that's one reason. Second reason I think is execution as a topic is very big, and it's also very vague. So in some sense, my contribution here is to try to put a better framework around the whole execution piece. And then the third reason, and this is now speaking both as a student, as a teacher, as a practitioner, is execution is just simply not sexy. You know, show of hands, how many people went to business school? A lot of my students, former and ex-students here, went to business school, want to be a grunt worker. Right? How many people want to sit back, have a beautiful hat on, nice title, hopefully something like C or VP or director. All I have to do is planning. I'll come up with the perfect plan. I'll let somebody else do the messy part called execution. It doesn't happen. I have friends that are really pretty high-level corporate strategists. And even for them, the genius part of 1% inspiration, they may spend 5% inspiration, still 95% on the perspiration side. And the reality is for most of us, and practically every one of us, spend overwhelming amount of time in trying to figure out how to do something, actually getting it done, than just why we're doing it. So execution is simply not sexy, I think, is because most students didn't go to MBA school saying, you know, I want to be a grunt worker, I want to be that worker bee. I want to labor through that task and face all the trouble. Strategy is beautiful. You know, you look at the various models out there. Michael Porter, if he's up here, could tell you about the 5 force models. It's just simply elegant. And that actually has a darker side to it. The darker side is what I consider to be on the research side. It's easier to research on things that you can control and contain and define. It is very hard to do research on a topic that's big, nebulous, and vague. So if you look at, I did some quick search, Amazon, my favorite bookstore, right? And I did a quick search on Amazon, typed the word execution, implementation, couple related terms, and I get about 2,000 hits. Not too bad. I was feeling pretty good. But take a guess when I type in strategy or strategic, how many hits I get? 42,000 hits. It's roughly 19 to 20 times more on how to do things. And that is the discrepancy you see both from the academic side, from the, let's say, the business leaders, the practical thinkers. Harvard Business Review, I think, has only 3 articles I could think of that's really hands-on execution, and God knows how many articles on planning or ideation or strategic planning or strategy. And so it creates that often perception that execution equals grunt work. And I'm here to confirm that it is actually quite a bit grunt work. But it is an essential component in what makes business work. Because after all, what is a strategy without showing results? What is a strategy without execution? Because if that's the case, what you have is just beautiful binders on the bookshelf collecting dust. So, some of the questions, right? How many companies have beautiful and expensive binders of idea strategies? How many of them are well executed? I speak from a lot of years of experience because I actually do write some of that strategy earlier in my career, and I still do to this very day. But the primary difference that when I do it today versus, let's say, 10 years ago, is I become quite a fierce realist asking the question, can we achieve results? How can we make these ideas into actions? How to make actions into initiatives and projects? How do we execute against them? Because otherwise, the world-class ideas are just ideas. The other side is, and I run a consulting company, so I have a bias here. I have a bias toward action. I found that there's a lot of good advice out there, but be blunt, advice are cheap. Unless you have to actually get into the weed, roll up your sleeve, get things done. Advice are just simply beautiful, elegant, it's almost always right. You don't have to execute on it, you don't have to do it. So as a company, what we do is we help our clients come up with ideas, and we also help them execute on those ideas. I think that is the responsible thing to do. So I won't name some of the big names, players out there. There are a lot of strategy consulting firms. And recently I actually worked with a client which hired one of those companies. And since I plan to post this on YouTube, I won't name the name of the company. And it was unanimous after the strategy session was done. They were thinking, should we use that company for further work? And the company, they did sort of a quick vote around the company, and it was unanimous to let go of the company. One, they were expensive. Two, they came up with advice that were great, except they are not executable. And there's just a divorce from reality.